Hello, guys, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 7, Resolution with Sinaiyah Emami. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inked Podcast. Today, we are wrapping up our chats about plot by closing out with our story's resolution. And here today to help me talk about this is Miss Sinaiyah Emami. So, how are you doing today, Miss Sinaiyah?
I am doing very well. Thank you so much for asking.
I'm so glad you're doing well, and I'm so excited to have you in the studio. You've only been in the studio for like a little bit, but I already can tell that you're going to be like really bubbly and really fun to talk to. Um, so, as like I said, this is Sinaiyah. I am so excited to have her in today. And as always, since it is her first time on the show, I get a chance to talk about her a little bit. So, Sinaiyah Emami is an aspiring blogger and entrepreneur who leads an active and busy life. Between writing articles with her sister for their blog We Signed Up To and guest posting on websites like Our Military Kids and Wounded Warrior Project, she and her sister do what they love most, reaching out to children of wounded, sick, and injured veterans to bring awareness and create a community. When she's not occupied with school and life's demands, you can find her reading a book, singing, or even trying out new recipes and food prepping. I personally love Sinaiyah's respect and love for keeping up with the military veterans, and she also seems, like I said before, like a very sweet, bubbly person. So I'm very excited to chat with her today. But without further delay, are you ready to just dive into our questions, Miss Sinaiyah?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. You have no idea. Okay, our first question for today is, since we are talking about resolution, in your own words, what is resolution?
Okay, resolution, I would say, is kind of the cherry on top to the story. You kind of have the beginning of a story, which is like that ice cream. It sets the tone for the rest of the story. You have the climax, that middle part that keeps you on the edge of your seat, wanting the ending. And then you have the resolution, the part that ties it all together. It's the cherry on top.
I love that. I love that description too. But yeah, the resolution just kind of like wraps everything up in a big neat bow because it concludes everything. It like wraps all of your ideas, all of your stories, all of your plots, your subplots, everything, and it just gives it a conclusive ending, and you just get this nice little package story afterwards. So I think that was a great description of what resolution is.
Thank you.
Um so, our next question, since that was such a perfect description of resolution, our next question is, why is resolution so important?
Well, I would say that resolution is so important because throughout the story, a writer will leave what I like to call loose threads. Those things in the story that keep the reader in question, the things that help the reader turn the page. Now, these parts are very important to the story because when you get to the resolution, you want those questions answered. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the time for the writer to really pull those loose threads and reveal the answers that have kept the reader throughout the entire book.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I, as someone who often writes mystery, I've written mystery many, many times. And as someone who's done that, I can tell you we use a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of like little mini like thoughts and ideas to, like Sinaiyah said, keep you on your toes and kind of keep you interested. And so when we get to that resolution, we can finally reveal how all of those things make sense. So yeah, that's great. You're nailing all of these descriptions today. Um, Moving on into our next question. You kind of covered our third question, so I'm just going to go down to our fourth. But it is, how does the resolution tend to affect our main character?
Yes. The amazing thing about reading a book is that you really get to follow the main character throughout. And sometimes you have books where, there are different points of views, but a lot of time with a book with just one main point of view, you really get to connect with the character you're reading about. And so the resolution is kind of as much for the reader as it is for the character. And the resolution gives the reader basically the assurance that the main character had their ending as well, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
You know, because as a reader, we want to see the main character have those questions answered for them, and we want to see them have that ending. So the resolution basically plays into what the reader wanted to see and also ending it for the main character.
It kind of gives everybody closure. Essentially, it
Yes.
wraps like I said, it wraps everything up in like a little bow, and you get like this big wash of relief and sadness as it ends. But also, you are
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, it's closing, it's done. Like everybody's okay, the main character's okay, I'm okay, despite the emotional turmoil this author has put me through,
Oh my gosh, yes.
etc., etc. Um, so moving on to our next question, which this is a very good question in my opinion. I applaud our creative development team for this. But they said, how can you create a resolution but still leave room for a sequel?
Oh my gosh, yes. That's one of my favorite questions because then you get to really talk about cliffhangers.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reader, you kind of have a love-hate relationship with cliffhangers. Because, you know, if you have a cliffhanger, but the second book is already published, easy, you just buy the next book. But if you're, say, a Kara Swanson fan and you've read Ignite, you are really wanting the second book out now. Um, but yeah, when you're able to craft a story that you want a cliffhanger to have an ending but also leave room for the reader to want more,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So you answer some questions, but a lot of the time when you have a cliffhanger, you also kind of throw in a monkey wrench
Mm-hmm.
so that there's something to really be picked up in the second book that leads you through the next
Yeah.
story, if that
Oh
makes
yeah, for
sense.
sure. I will say I am a big monkey wrench thrower when it comes to the ends of my stories because I have
Oh my
an
gosh,
entire
yes.
series where every single book ends with the same scene, but
Oh
in a
my gosh.
different way. So I have this series that I'm writing that's called Amulets of Averon. It was named Avalon for the longest time, and then I recently changed it to Averon, and so now I'm like fighting myself.
Yeah.
But the in that story, something big. I'm not gonna say what because I want it to be a surprise, but something big happens at the end of every single one of those books, and is a consistent question as to there's a character that shows up in those end scenes, but you never find out who it is until the last book.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, this is gonna make a lot of people very upset with me. But it's like
Yes.
also gonna keep them reading. So hey, um, okay, that was side note. That was my side note of the day. Moving on to our next question, which is we haven't really talked about this, but we sort of talked about it just now. But it is when is it good to have an open-ended resolution? But before you answer that, can you just explain a little bit what you think an open-ended resolution is?
Okay. I think I'm big on examples. If you haven't like figured that out
Me
by
too,
now,
though.
but yeah, it helps really understand things. So for me, I like to use the example of the book Flipped by I think I'm saying it right, Wendelin von Dranen. In her book, she ends it in the way that you kind of have an ending, but I mean, if you've read it, you kind of
Mm-hmm.
understand because it ends, but there's also what we call like room for the reader to add into the blanks, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. So I guess I don't know. Does that kind of explain it in a way, or do you want
I
me to
feel like
explain it
that.
a little bit
I
more
feel
than
like
that?
that explains it pretty well. I think that was pretty well done. So, how do you? When do you think it's a good time to have an open-ended resolution?
Well, I think as a writer, you want to leave your reader feeling satisfied, of course. You know, they've made it through your book or your story, and you want them to feel pretty happy about how it ended. But there's also times where you kind of want them to take what they've read and make their own endings
Mm-hmm.
almost. So sometimes you will close it up, you'll answer all of their questions, but you also end it in a way that allows them to fill in the
Hmm.
blanks, if
Yeah.
that makes
No,
sense.
yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm totally here for that. Um, so our last question of the day, which is this again, applause to our creative development team. They were hitting it hard with these resolution questions, but it is, does
Yes.
the resolution always have to be happy?
Okay, that is actually my favorite question. I was looking over the question list and I was like, that is
It's
genius.
a great question. I
you
told
know?
you they were on it with these resolution questions.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I mean, that question is one that I even grapple with, as a writer. Because, when you're a reader, a lot of the times, life isn't perfect. So a lot of readers will read to kind of get out of
Hmm.
reality. But sometimes books and movies, even that don't always give us the happy endings we want, are the most
Hmm.
memorable. Because, take for example, this isn't a book, but it's a very beloved movie. I don't know if you've watched
Oh
Titanic.
gosh. Oh gosh.
Yes. I think I was crying at the end of
Oh
that
my
movie.
gosh.
So I don't really want to spoil it, but Titanic is a perfect example of a movie that doesn't give us the ending we want, and yet people still watch it. You know what I mean? It's one of those that it's not exactly what we expect from something you sit down for
Yeah.
entertainment as. But I think that's what makes it
Uh
so
huh.
iconic. Because sometimes those sad endings are the ones that stick with
Oh
readers and
yeah,
viewers the
absolutely.
most. So I think as a writer, exactly. So, like, as a writer, you want to take this into real consideration. You don't want to throw in a sad ending at every one of
Hmm.
your stories, but you want to really craft an ending that stays with
Hmm.
the reader. And if that ending is a sad ending, craft it in a way that is just tasteful and really leaves the reader pondering, but also thankful for their
Yeah,
ending, if that makes
absolutely.
sense.
I 100% agree with that. I am someone who I've written happy endings, but I've also written like heart-wrenching endings, or like you just
Mm-hmm.
like one of the characters is in complete and utter despair, and like the other ones are happy, but there's this one character that's in complete utter despair. I really like having very relatable villains
Right.
and very relatable antagonists,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had to do that recently. And I was doing practice endings, and I was just sitting there crying, and my mom was like, "Are you good?" And I was like, "I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. Like
Yeah.
we're just gonna move on." So yeah, that was a lot of great advice for sure, and I'm here for it. Um, well, that is all the time we have for today, Miss Sinaiyah. So thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I
I
had the
know that
best
was a
time.
lot of fun. We're gonna have to do this more often. Um, And as
Yes, for
always,
sure.
thank you to our listeners for being here, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.